have closed captioning available, and that transcript will be sent out to everyone along with the presentation and the webinar recording afterwards. If you have any questions, comments, or reactions during the webinar, we encourage you to please share those in the Q&A pod, which you'll find in the lower left-hand corner. And then at the end, we ask that you please participate in the poll questions, giving us your feedback. And David will have some special instructions as it relates to that today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to him to introduce Val.
Thank you, Jessica. As she said, this is our final 2014 Community of Practice webinar. We certainly appreciate all of the efforts and coordination that Jessica and Amy Dessenberg-Wines have provided through our IC grant, and that's helped us message out and communicate better with all of our employment professionals across the state of Iowa. Jessica had mentioned at the end of today's presentation, you'll have an opportunity to fill out some poll questions regarding specifically Val's presentation, the comments and information that's been shared. But I would also ask you to think twice about spending a little bit of time on the poll questions, and please give us feedback on topics of interest to you that you would like to hear more about in a Community of Practice webinar format. We are optimistic that we will be able to implement this again in 2015. We are submitting an application for some continued funds to do this. We're optimistic that we'll be able to receive a positive response to that, and that will allow us to do a monthly Community of Practice call in 2015. But we'd like, as we plan for that, we'd like to make sure that we're identifying topics and speakers that would be most relevant to you out in the field. So please take a few minutes today and provide us some feedback through the poll questions on any ideas, comments, ways that we strengthen this process to better meet the employment needs of the individuals we're serving. So I would really encourage you to do that. With that said, I am happy to introduce and transition this over to Val Morgan. Val is a consultant, an entrepreneur, a business professional from the state of Washington. She was with us last month and kind of whet our appetites, and we'll continue to discussion today on some strategies of how we can better relate and communicate with our business partners. So Val, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Iowa. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate everyone that's on this call today, on this webinar. And this is part two of a two-part webinar. And I'm really excited to be here. And those who missed the first one, I hope that most people got to see the first one because they really relate to each other. So if you didn't get to, I really encourage you to go back on the platform and check the first one out. But I could give you a little background again. And as David said, I previously worked in corporate America. I led sales teams. I also taught sales training, and I also sold a service as well. And since then, about 6 years ago, I got out of there, and I own and operate 3 businesses of my own, one of them being Conscious Moves, where I help employment consultants increase their outcomes with community employment. I currently work with around 15 agencies and several counties in the state of Washington and Oregon and now Iowa. And I just want to say it's so rewarding to see employment consultants be able to take tangible tools that they learn in my class and put it to good use. My class is typically 8 hours, so there's a lot to cover here today. I'm going to try to cram it all in. First wanted to go over just a little recap on what we did the first time. And we went over some pre-call planning, and that was really about learning about a business prior to going in and approaching the business. And then we learned about opening the call, which is getting potential employers time. And then we got into gathering information, which is asking skilled questions to uncover unmet or needs of employers. And so today we're going to talk about establishing those needs with the employers and features and benefits, trial close, and then handling objections. And I just want everybody to know that I teach this in an 8-part, but an objection can come at any time, not necessarily at number 8. So for those folks who, think outside the box, I guess that's what I want to say, because they don't go in order, but I teach them in order because it just makes more sense that way. And I know that everybody has their own style, and so hopefully everyone can take some tangible tools and techniques away and incorporate them into how you approach job development. A little recap also, one of the most common mistakes employment consultants make is doing all the talking. And I talked a lot about that it's really about relationship building. And potential employers want to be heard. So just a little recap to remember that selling is not telling. It's really 20% talking and 80% listening. And you're going to be a more effective job developer if you can demonstrate your ability to be a better listener in order to uncover all of the needs of the employer. And also this is a recap too of all of common needs of employers. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because you will be getting a copy of this, but these are typical common needs of any business. And so the idea is that what we want to do is that when we gather information by asking skilled questions, what happens is you'll uncover what those needs are and establish what those needs are with the prospects. And so the questions that you ask to uncover the needs, remember, should be determined by the research that you do in your pre-call planning. So that was sort of where we left it last time. And I just want to go over a few questions that I think are really important that you would always want to ask a potential employer to uncover needs. You want to ask, kind of the whole trick of sales is that you want to ask leading questions. So although you might know something about the employer, you might want to ask them that question so that you get him talking or her talking about it so that they kind of become aware and that they realize what their needs are. And once they do, you get them in the palm of your hand because you can satisfy every single need that they have for sure. So for example, one of the things is how much time do you spend on entry-level training? I would always ask that question. The reason why is because it works to your benefit. Hiring someone is expensive and it's time-consuming. So when the prospect says, they have to take their best guy off the floor, they have to train the new staff, the manager has to schedule an extra person during that time, that's a lot of time and money. You want to get them talking about that, okay? And another question is, tell me about your employee retention rate. Typically on entry-level jobs, there is high turnover. I think it's like 70-some%, if I remember right. But as I would say, 65% of statistics are made up anyway. But there's typically high turnover. And the folks that you serve nationally have an almost 94% retention rate. So you want to get them talking about how they turn over their entry-level positions. And then you can come back and talk about the retention rate of the folks you serve. Another one is, are you the ultimate decision maker? I always encourage employment consultants to ask this question when they're getting ready to talk to somebody. And the reason why is because how many times have you heard, well, this all sounds great, but I'm not the one who makes the decision. So I try to nip that in the bud ahead of time by asking them, are you the one who makes the ultimate decision? If they say yes, what that means is later on down the road, they can't come back and say they need to talk to someone else. And number two, it gives you an opportunity to ask, is it available to be in the meeting as well? All right. And then the fourth thing And this is kind of a little tool and technique that you can use in any question that you ask to get people saying more, is that when you're uncovering needs, you can say, what are the top 3 things you value in your staff or in somebody that you're looking to hire? I hear a lot of employment consultants say, well, what is the thing you value most? And then the potential employer might say, well, I need them to be dependable. At that point, you've only uncovered one need. You need somebody who's dependable, right? If you say what are the top 3 things, they have to say 3 things. So, they might say, well, I need someone to show up in time, I need them to be dependable, and I need them to be flexible with their work schedule. Now you have 3 needs that you've uncovered just by asking one question. So this is a time I like to use, I just put labels on things, but this is a transition basically. And a lot of times what happens is when you gather information and you're developing a relationship with them and you came back 5 or 6 times and you've got a lot of needs uncovered, at some point it's like, okay, you want to go back and develop a plan. Maybe you write a proposal. Maybe you just make notes for a verbal discussion at a later date. But I would highly recommend a written proposal. Written proposals are something that businesses are used to dealing with every day. I get business proposals every day, and I give them every day. And I always think from a buyer's perspective and also a business perspective is that when you show that you put a lot more work in, the more respect you're going to get from the potential employer. The more respect you're going to get from anybody if you show that you've put a little time and effort into something, and they're more likely to want to listen to what your recommendations are. So this is where we come to establishing needs and paraphrasing. And this is basically just restating the needs and gaining agreement. So as you gather information, it's more likely that you're going to become aware of what the needs are, but the prospect has not reached necessarily the same conclusion. So when you come back and you want to present your proposal, you always want to recap the previous conversation or all of the information that you've uncovered. Okay? So, for example, if your information gathered, they said that business was really slow. You don't want to go back and say, the last time we met you said business was really slow. That's not really paraphrasing because you're using their same words. But what you might want to say instead is, the last time we met, one of the things you mentioned is that you need to get more customers into your business. Is that correct? And then they say, yeah, that's correct. And then you get the head bobbing, and now everybody's on the same page, and we're all happy, and we're moving forward. So at that point, and you might want to do this with just maybe 3 or 4 needs that you uncovered. You don't want to go, 15 needs. Just pick 3 or 4 that are maybe the most important. So when you ask that and you gain agreement, yes, I need to get more customers in. So at this point is when you can begin to present your features and benefits of your service. So for example, I like to give a lot of examples. Since they need to get more customers again, and they agree to that, one of the features and benefits that you could share is that that's great. You really need to get more customers, right? And they say yes. Then you say, so that's great because did you know that 87% of the public agree that they prefer to do business with companies that hire folks of all abilities, which could potentially broaden their customer base, right? And it could potentially also help their business pick up. So you want to address the needs that you uncovered with your features and benefits of your organization. So let's talk about features and benefits. I love this part because, I do a lot of these trainings, and one of the things that I put up is a blackboard, chalkboard, and I write on there features and benefits. And I go around the room and I say, so what do you guys do? Tell me what you do. A feature is a fact about your service. right? So it refers to your service. It's a fact that you pre-screen your job seekers. That is a feature. It's a fact that you help diversify a workforce. Okay? The benefit is what good comes out of it, or what is in it for them. And it's a great exercise to go through. I really encourage all of you to do that with your staff or your coworkers, because people get caught up on only a couple things that they do, and you'd be surprised, really, at how few people know actually what they do. I think they know what they do, but they have a hard time explaining what that is, and you really have to be able to memorize these features and benefits. And you only want to present the features and benefits of the needs that you uncovered. For example, go back to when I said the diversified workforce. If in your information gathering they said they didn't feel like their staff was very diversified, well, then you'd probably want to bring up that feature and benefit, okay? So remember, only present the features and benefits of the needs you uncovered. When you do that, it also makes the potential employer feel like that they were heard and that you're just not trying to, sell them on a bunch of things that they don't even need. It's part of the relationship building. There is another type of benefit, and these are ultimate benefits. And these are really the hot buttons that makes someone make a decision to motivate the prospect to do business with you for sure. And there's two different types that you need to be aware of. One type of ultimate benefit is to the company. And in that case, it saves or makes them money. It saves or makes better use of their time. It makes their job easier or their product better, the quality of product or the increased efficiency. And then also improves health and reduces stress. And I always say, and it saves lives. Because if you do safety audits, it could make everyone more safe, which could potentially save lives. So yes, you guys all save lives. The other type of benefit is to the individual. Now, the type of benefit to the individual is typically something like recognition, achievement. So this all depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a guy who's got, a lot of awards up on there and he's really into recognition, you might talk more about the recognition that he might get. On for example, security, job security. There are a lot of folks that businesses where they have corporate missions around hiring folks of all abilities. And if they don't have that going on, maybe their job's on the line. So security, job security. You got to keep up with those corporate missions and values, and you can call them out on that stuff. Another thing is personal profit. Sorry, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and the truth is that some people most people just care about making the money. And I'll give you an example. For a car dealership, there's a service manager, and the service manager gets paid on the bottom line. And if people aren't coming back to get their oil changed because their cars aren't clean, for example, and they're going to go to another person another business who cleans their cars after they get their oil changed. They're not going to come back to that store, and guess what? That guy's not going to make the same amount of money. So the idea of a natural extension onto a business of detailing a car after it has an oil change could really, really be valuable to an employment consultant to bring up to a particular business. You need to know who you're talking to. That's really the whole idea of this. So let's talk about the features and benefits and ultimate benefits. This is an example of this. And like I said, I want to challenge you to each go back and do an exercise with your staff or coworkers and think about what are the features and benefits of your agency. Typically, they're mostly the same, but sometimes they're a little different. And really, we're going to go over these, but these should be memorized and practiced over and over. I encourage you that once you guys get your own together, that you take a picture of it, you put it on your mirror when you're getting ready in the morning, you say it out loud in your car, because features and benefits are what handles objections, which is everyone's biggest fear, right? So we'll talk about that later, but you need to get these down. So for example, one of the features of ABC Agency is they help pre-screen employees. And the benefit is you get a qualified candidate, somebody who actually is going to fit for the position of the job. And the ultimate benefit is that it saves time and money to the business. Another thing is you help assist with the training. So what that could potentially do, the benefit is that it frees up the staff of the potential employer. And that ultimately makes the manager's job easier. Another thing is that you provide a job coach. That, again, the benefit to the business is that it's less time managing, which ultimately saves them more time. You help provide advertising. If your agency has a Facebook page and you put links on your Facebook page website of the employers that you have, there's a way that you promote your employers. If you put advocate statement or testimonials on your website, that's a way that you help with advertising. And also word of mouth, right? But the benefit is public awareness. So another thing, I'm just going down the list here a little bit further. Restructuring duties. If you come in and you do a job analysis and you find there's some inefficiencies in some ways, well, that's great to tell the employer that, we can come in and do that. But what they really want to hear is that you're going to make all their other staff more efficient. Established business. Some people, you could use this a lot because I know there's a lot of agencies that are in competition with each other, even though everybody's for the greater good. Sometimes you get in a little competition. And some businesses have been in business for 40 years. Some have only been in business for 2 or 3. It could be a benefit that you might be able to talk to them about when they said they tried it before and it didn't work. Well, great. I've been in business for 40 years. So what this means to you is that I'm going to provide you with a lot of peace of mind, and that would ultimately probably reduce a lot of the stress that you might have had when you had the bad experience. For example, continual follow-up. The benefit to the employer is employee retention. And when you retain employees, you save time and money because it's expensive to rehire. The number one thing that I see employment consultants make the mistake of is presenting a lot of features and not enough benefits. So even if you look at this list here and you see the features on the left-hand side, and you're an employment consultant and you say, hey, we pre-screen employees, we assist with the training, we provide a job coach, guess what? You get 2 for 1. And, folks with disabilities have an almost 94% retention rate. And we're at no cost to you. Plus, we're going to help you with community involvement, and we've been in business for 30 years, plus we're going to help diversify your staff. Okay, that all sounds great. And that's typically what I see a lot of employment consultants do. If you can get to the point where you start talking about you're going to free up their staff, you're going to give them public awareness, they're going to have less turnover, you're going to assist with the training, you're going to broaden their customer base, and you're going to help with employee retention, now their ears are perking up. And then when you get to the ultimate benefits, saving them time and money, making their job easier, then that's even better than that. Now, I always like to use the word potentially because I don't like to go in and say, well, this is going to save you time and money. You're going to make a lot more money because of this. You need to be really careful about doing that. But you could use examples of folks that maybe you're already serving or other employers that you have. You could give an example of how maybe that happened. with another story that you have. You have to memorize and practice these, folks. Really, really important. Okay, so a good way that you could not present too many features and not enough benefits is this technique called layering features to the ultimate benefit. And you can practice it. So we learn the job first. So what this means for you, Mr. or Mrs. Employer, is that we're going to assist with training the employee for the job. And the ultimate benefit to you is you're going to have a qualified employee, which will reduce your training period. And one of the things you told me earlier is that you spend a lot of time on training. Okay, so now you uncovered the need, you're presenting a feature and benefit of that need and an ultimate benefit, and it makes it more difficult for them to say no. Also, you can tell your stories. I really encourage stories. The way that I did this is sort of a little bit, on the easy side. When you get really good at this, you start incorporating your stories in there. We learn the job first. For example, if I just use the car position, for example, the last person that I got a job folds pizza boxes at Pizza Hut. And so one of the things that I did is I went in and I learned how to fold the boxes first. And so I went back with my job seeker and I taught them how to fold it. So when he came to work, he was already ready to go. He didn't have to be trained. And that saved that potential employer a lot of money. Okay? So use your stories. If you don't have any stories, use somebody else's. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay. So, like I said, you do this in a proposal, you write it down, you're addressing the employer's needs with your features and benefits, and now it's time to trial close. So, I think also the biggest thing that's really hard that I hear from employment consultants is that it's really just hard to ask for something. How do I make that ask? How do I close the deal? And when I say close, I'm saying you should always be closing. A, B, C. Always be closing. Because you're closing to get the decision maker's time. You're closing to get an interview. You're closing to get a tour of the facility. You're closing to get past the gatekeeper. So you're really always closing. This trial close is the questions that can help you test your prospect's reaction. So trial close questions help you find out what the potential employer might think and feel about your service. And it just sounds like, how do you feel about what you heard? Or what do you think about all this? It really asks for an opinion, where a closing question asks for a decision. So it's sort of a softer close. I love to use this. It's one of the most underutilized strategies, even though it's amongst the most powerful strategies. So it can tell you when to ask for the close. If you need that little extra push, then that's great. It can help you figure out where you want to go next with that. The reason why I have the little guy going shh is, for one reason, you need to give the prospect time to respond. Sometimes we're not always really good with silence. How do you feel about what you've heard? Well, you've said a lot, so it's a lot to take in. You need to give the prospect time to respond. I've seen not just employment consultants, but salespeople in general going out where they talk because they can't stand the silence, and then they roll themselves backwards in the sale. So try to be quiet. Silence is definitely is golden. Excuse me. So when you do this, when you ask these trial close questions, what do you think of all this? You're going to get two different things. You're going to get a buying signal, or you're going to get an objection. We're going to talk about objections last. But if you get a buying signal, it might sound like, well, this sounds interesting, or I'd like to know more about this. Or it might be like, yeah, I don't really know how this would all work out with my staff. Okay? That's a buying signal. Buying signals come in 3 different types. Strong buying signals, medium buying signals, and low buying signals. As I said, a strong buying signal might sound like, yeah, this sounds great, tell me more. A medium buying signal might sound like, well, I really liked how you told me how you might be able to broaden my customer base or help me with my efficiencies, but I just really don't know how this would all work out with my business. Okay, maybe that's a medium buying signal. And then you have a low buying signal, which just might be like, yeah, I don't really see how this would fit. Or, yeah, hey, I'm not interested, for example. There are 3 types of closes that you can give based on the buying signals that you get. If you get a strong buying signal, you want to give an assumptive close, which means you're assuming that they're ready to do business, you're in the driver's seat. Great, I'd love to come in next Wednesday at 1, shadow a job so we can get you a new hire as soon as possible. Or, hey, great, I'd love to come in next Thursday and bring my candidate in for an interview. Whatever it happens to be, you're in the driver's seat. One thing about the assumptive close is that because you're in the driver's seat, you don't want to say to the potential employer, well, I'd love to come in next week. Is there a time that would work for you? Is there a time that you're available? Because now, guess what? It puts a little burden on the potential employer. Because now they have to look in their phone, they have to go to the date, they have to see if they're, when they're available, they have to propose a couple times, and maybe that doesn't work out. And it doesn't roll the ball along faster. And I'll give you a personal example. So for those of you who do social media and you have Facebook out there, an example would be if you have like an old friend that you went to school with, and all of a sudden you become friends with him or her, and you say, you see that they live in the same area, and so you send a message to them and say, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in so long, we should get together sometime. And then, a day later, maybe they respond back and say, yeah, that would be great. When do you ever get together? You don't. Imagine, though, if you were to say, I really like to get together. Are you available next Thursday? Maybe around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, we could go meet maybe for happy hour at Anthony's. At that point, they still might not be available, but they will at least go, well, I'm not available this Thursday, but how about next Thursday? The whole idea of the assumptive close, you're in the driver's seat, stay in it. A medium buying signal, the type of close that you could give would be a contained choice. This is kind of tricky. I love using this. It's you're giving them a choice, but you're containing them. So, I can see, okay, so you said that you like some of the things, but there's some of the things you don't. Well, I can see why, you might need to clear up some more things. But, hey, I'd love to come tour your facility. Would Thursday or would Friday work better for you? Would you like to see one of my job seekers applications or 2? So you're giving them a choice, but you're containing them. You can also use this on your friends and family. It works great. Another type of close is a direct close. This is if you get a low buying signal, okay? And it could simply sound like, yeah, I just don't see how this would fit into my business, okay? You're probably going to hear that out there. I don't consider that an objection. I think it's a buying signal. So I want to keep the ball moving forward. And on a low buying signal, I always show empathy. And I always say, I can see how you might not think that this would all fit in. How about, maybe I bring my client by, and maybe you could just meet them. Okay? You're still moving the ball forward. You're not saying, well, what is it about that you wouldn't like? So you're not bringing up an objection, and you're also not walking out the door. Uh-oh. Okay, I guess this is a blank one, but I know what it is. There are 2 rules in closing. One is always ask for the job. Always ask for the tour. Always ask for the interview. Always ask for the appointment. You lose 100% of all the businesses and all the business that you don't ask for. And the next thing is you really need to be quiet. Silence is golden, and you need to give the prospect time to respond. Oh, handling objections. Okay, this is the thing that everybody wants to know. I'll tell you that if you took part 1 and in this part you practice your features and benefits, there's not one single objection that you can't overcome. I always tell employment consultants, all I would ever expect is that you handle the objections. Okay? 20% of the people are never going to do business with you. 20% of the people you're never going to want to do business with. So as long as you handle them and you don't walk out and you don't feel like, geez, oh, I should have said this, okay, you have a way to handle every objection. So rarely does a prospect say no. I mean, most of the time they present an objection. And you should view them as an opportunity to overcome uncertainty. So, for example, an objection might be, well, I'd love to, do this, but I'm not hiring right now. That's an example. So let's talk about what causes objections. Insufficient information. Maybe they think something that you didn't present and it crossed wires and they didn't get the information correct. Maybe they don't see the benefits. Possibly you could have presented a lot of features and not enough benefits to the potential employer. Also, a previous bad experience. That stops a lot of folks from continuing on, and it could bring up an objection. And then also there's always a work-related distraction that prevents someone from making a decision. For example, oh yeah, this all sounds great, but I don't really know who the manager is going to be, and we're just getting ready to move, and I got all this, inventory in the back. And so something that distracts them from making a decision. It happens a lot. Making a decision can be nerve-wracking and stressful. And, a million prospects can go through, or a million questions can go through the prospect's head. Am I going with the right agency? Will this work for my business? And when we're uncertain, as we are in life in general, everybody, we have decisions. It means that they don't want to use your service. Okay? Use it as opportunity. These are common objections. These come from employment consultants. I ask people what they hear all the time out there. And these are a lot of the things that they come up with. We don't use agencies. We had a bad experience. We're not hiring right now. We're cutting back hours. So, I say that's great if you're cutting back hours or you're not hiring. Once again, you're all about relationship building. So just because they're cutting back hours and they're not hiring right now doesn't mean you continue to build a relationship, because at some point they might be. But I'm going to help you learn how to get around that right that very second. But as I said before, if you can't overcome the objection, you still need to keep the business relationship. Okay? You have to talk to HR. You got to apply online. I'm sure people have heard them all. All right. I love this method right here. This is the locked loop technique. As you see this, it's a circle. And when you get really, really good at this, you can basically talk circles around potential employers. Now, people say, well, Val, how many times do you go around the circle? And I say, well, not very many, because you want to respect the person and what they're saying, and at the same time, they should respect you and what you have to say as well. So maybe a couple times around the loop, and you can read body language and you can see where people are coming from. And if you aren't asking for the job or the business the first time you go in, you're less likely to get somebody who is going to blow you off at that time, because you built a relationship with them already before you actually. So it's a little bit softer going around this loop. You don't want to take somebody through this loop the first time you meet them. I'm telling you. You might not get to go back. The first thing you want to do in the lock loop technique is find the real objection. Oftentimes, the first objection is not the real one. Then you want to express empathy, and we'll talk about that. Then you want to state your features and benefits that overcomes the objection. And I just showed you earlier how to do that. And then you want to trial close, which in this case sounds like more, does that make sense, or does that answer your concern, or does that make you feel better about it? You're just asking for a yes or no. And then the close, which is another thing that we just went through. Okay? Let's take a look at find the real objection. There are two types of ways that you find the real objection. As I said, oftentimes the first one is not the real one, so you need to uncover the real objection. For example, yeah, sorry, we're not hiring, and you go back next month and 3 people are new there, okay? They were just trying to get rid of you, and I don't want that to happen to you guys. So you can answer the objection with a question. This is where folks say, oh gosh, Val, I don't think I could do this. But just try it. Just try it. It definitely works. So answer the objection with a question. So say the objection is, not right now, come back next month. Well, is that really an objection? I don't know. What I'd like to say is, well, what's keeping you from moving forward today? Sort of like throw me a bone. Tell me what the objection really is. Because come back next month, I mean, what does that really mean? So what's keeping you from moving forward today? Another one, if somebody says, we're not hiring, I want to know if that's true of them, because maybe they did have a bad experience. Maybe they do feel uncomfortable, and they just don't want to tell you that. So what I like to say is, if you were hiring, would this be something you'd be interested in? Well, you have to talk to HR. If it was up to you, would you do it? Maybe another one is business is slow. So what you're saying is that if business was better, you would be ready to hire one of my job candidates. You'd be into this. Okay? You're going to get yeses or no. If you get yes, then you know it's the real objection. If you get, well, no, I wouldn't, well, then you want to say nicely, well, tell me why. Okay? Another way you can handle it is by paraphrasing it, which is stating it in your own words, the objection, and asking for agreement. So you're ready to hire one of my job candidates, but something's holding you back from doing it today. Is that correct? Okay? I've had this happen before where an employment consultant used this. They came back and told me this story. And I used that. Typically, I would walk out is what they said, but I used that, Val. And you know what they said to me? Well, yeah, what's holding me back is that actually next month, we're coming into our busiest season in 2 months, and next month we're going to start hiring. So you need to come back then. If they wouldn't have said that, not right now, come back next month, where a lot of employment consultants will walk out the door, somebody got a job by doing this. It's sort of like calling them on their bluff, I guess, so to speak. The jobs here are too complex. I don't think that they could do this. So if I brought you a job seeker who could do the complex tasks that you're asking for, you would be ready to go on this. Now, if they say yes, then great. Then, if you have somebody who could do those complex tasks, then that's great. if you don't right now, for example, if you have one of your job seekers that you don't have a job seeker that can do complex tests, for example, like a bunch of different things, then you're still building the relationship with the person. Okay? And on the other side of it, the features and benefits is that sometimes when people have to do certain tasks and they have to do all the tasks, it is really inefficient for a business. And when you come in and you see that somebody, if you're job carving and you see that someone, 5 people a day are going up to the copy machine making these copies, and you get like 3 hours worth of time and you could carve a position into that job, well then that's another way that you can say, well, I can see why you would think they're complex, but how about I come in and do a job analysis? So it's just another way to get around it. You know what? Once you understand your prospect's real concerns, you can move forward, but you have to get their real concerns. Once you understand it, and once you get their attention, don't let everything go that you've already accomplished so far, okay? The next thing is in the loop is expressing empathy, okay? I understand you had a bad experience before, and I can see your jobs here are complex, and. The reason why I put and in red up there is because a lot of folks will use words like but and however. So I can understand you had a bad experience before. However, it sounds like however I don't really give a crap, really. But if you use words like I understand you had a bad experience and, it sounds a lot better in a transition, because if you use words like but and however, it kind of takes away that fuzzy feeling that you created by showing and expressing empathy. Another thing you can use, technique, which takes you all around the loop, is the feel, felt, found. So if someone says, sorry, we're not hiring part-time, one of the things you could say is that, I understand how you feel. Some of my other employers felt that same way. But what they found was by having employees open to part-time work, they were able to have more flexible work schedules for their staff. And one of the things you told me earlier is that you really value somebody that your employee that is flexible. So this would be a perfect fit. And it might sound a little canned when I'm saying it because I'm reading it off this PowerPoint. But when you go in and you talk to them, and you're really genuine, and you're speaking from your heart, it's not going to sound like that. So here are some examples in closing. I wanted to give you guys some examples of features and benefits of objections. Because remember, the first thing you want to do is find the real objection. And then once you do, you want to express empathy. Then you want to state your features and benefits that overcome the objection. And then once you've addressed the concern with your feature and benefit, you're safe to trial close by saying, does that make sense? And then at the end, then you want to close. If you get a great buy-in signal, then you go for it. So for example, if a common objection is like, we don't think they could do the job, and that's a common objection, then you can express empathy and say, well, I can see why you might feel that way. One of the things that we offer at ABC Agency is that we provide on-the-job support. So what that looks like is we come with a job coach, and we help support the employee in doing the job. And so in the end, you will be getting a capable employee because we will be helping out with that. And the ultimate benefit is that, it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to provide you a lot of peace of mind by having this person that is helping with on-the-job support. Does that make sense? If they say yes, then you say, great, how about I come in next Tuesday at 1? So you're just taking them around the circle. They're afraid that they won't last long in the environment, for example. Great, well, your job candidate isn't going to last long. Well, I can see why you might think that, but actually, the folks I serve have an almost 94% retention rate nationally. And so what this means, and because they really want to get a chance in the workforce, And typically, these people will stay on the job for years and years. Use your stories. For example, I have this guy that I'm serving. He's been working at the Fry's down the road for the last 10 years. And so really what's going to benefit you is that you're going to have less turnover. And as you said before, hiring people costs a lot of money, right? They say, right. You say, great. How about I come in next Tuesday at 1 and tour your facility? Or whatever it is that you're closing, okay? I'm just kind of making it up. So another thing is, we don't have time for this. We don't have time to train. So if you had the time to train, you'd be ready to go. Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I can see why you might not have the time to train or why you might think that. But one of the valuable things about, hiring one of my job seekers is that we come in and we shadow somebody and we learn the job first. And so what this means to you is we're going to assist in the training. So you're not going to have to worry about it anymore. Does that make sense? Well, if they say no, which it does make sense, so it's really hard for them to say no. It doesn't mean they're going to hire one of your job seekers, but you're handling the objection. The same thing with a bad experience. If somebody had a bad experience, I would encourage you to not just walk out, but to ask them, what was the bad experience? Maybe they say, well, the job coach never showed up, or they promised all these things and it didn't happen. So, hey, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's great. I'm going to be the job coach, and I'm going to be continually following up with you always, so that if problems arise, I will be right there to help you. And what that benefit to you is that I'm going to solve sudden issues promptly so that you can get the peace of mind and not have to worry about that. How does that sound? Does that make sense? Does that answer your concern? Okay, experience. Need to be high producers. That's another objection that people get. Well, one of the features that you do is you can come in and do a job analysis. And you create job efficiencies by restructuring duties. And so what this means to you, potential employer, is that everybody's going to produce more. In this case, you could also use your stories. Okay? I'm so passionate about this features and benefits of handling objections because I feel like a lot of folks don't know what to say. And they just really want to, walk out and not handle that. So that's why I encourage you as much as possible to memorize these features and benefits because that's what's going to help you handle objections, okay? And, you just bring them around the loop. And if another objection comes up, you just return to the beginning of the loop and start over. And if one doesn't come up, well, then congratulations. You just got your participant a job. So that's the whole idea of it. I just really encourage you to learn these features and benefits. And I would like to see everybody, like I said, do it with their own staff. If you have staff on here and you don't have your managers in here, request to do this. Because everybody has different features and benefits. And then you can practice this and you can quiz each other on this. And you could come up with your own. These aren't the end-all, be-all. These are just ones that have been out here that I hear from folks that are the most, and the features and benefits that they would use to handle those objections. So I think I'm pretty good to wrap it up. And I'd like to thank you guys for joining today and being patient with me. It was a lot of information, and I typically would like to have people practice this and role play it and for the 8-hour class, but for this class, I could only just explain it to you. So I encourage you guys to go out there and practice, practice, practice. Thank you.
Hey, Val, this is Dave, and we had a question come in through our writing. They wanted you to maybe expand a little bit more on the handling objections issue, specific to when they're visiting with a business, they get the response, I really like your proposal, but, corporate office won't go for it. Could you elaborate a little bit on some strategies for that person or for how you might respond to that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the first thing you want to find out is, what is it the real objection? So I understand that I have to go to corporate. If it was completely and solely up to you, would it be something that you would be interested in pursuing? Okay, so that's the number one thing. Because if they say no, well, the ball drops right there. Then you need to know why, right? If they say yes, and you get them to say yes, then what you can do is you can say, okay, would you be willing to hook me up with the information of the person that I need to contact? And that's one way that you could ask for it, and then you'd have to get to that person. I would ask, would it be okay if you could help me get a meeting with this person in HR? That's the other way that you can do it. And I'm telling you is that I know we all think that HR is this end-all, be-all thing up in the sky that, we can't reach. But the truth is that on the ground, the managers that are on the ground have a lot of say in this. I know I'll use Home Depot as an example. Home Depot, I don't know if you have them in Iowa. We have them over here. And Home Depot, they might say HR that they don't do that, but the managers can go to HR and really fight for that to happen where they can actually get it done. Unless you've created a really good relationship with the manager, then they're less likely to fight for you. So if you've been developing this relationship with the manager over time and you get the proposal, the only thing you can do is have them be the people who go to HR along with you and fight for getting that done. I hope that answers your question. There's no magic answer.
We also had thank you very much. We also had, and this will be our final question as we're kind of up against our timeline, but another question that came in was that some of the businesses are doing more screening like with online personality assessments. And if someone has difficulty with the online personality assessment or online process, do you have some suggestions for how they might deal with that?
Once again, this is still special circumstances, you guys. I mean, at some point we hope it's not, but it really still is. So once again, you have got to develop the relationship with the person that's making the hiring decisions. There are ways to flag those tests. There are ways to be able to flag at the bottom that this needs to go straight to this manager or this person wanted to see this. So it really, really comes down to the relationship that you develop with the manager. And if for some reason, one of your job seekers they know they're not going to pass that, they need to talk to them about it, and they need to build that relationship. Would you be willing to forego that piece of it? Would HR be willing to forego it? Are you willing to go to HR and ask them if they will? So once again, it's just about getting the buy-in from the managers in order to be able to go talk to, corporate America, I guess, or the HR department. I hope that answers your question. I know that people, they want this magic answer, but at the end of the day, you really got to spend the time getting to know the people.
Val, thank you very much. I think that's a perfect wrap-up and summary for the work that we've kind of been focusing on over the last 8 months, and kind of a quick summary. It's about our connections and relationships, and Val provided a number of great strategies, and I think we've all benefited from the time spent with you, Val. When we first approached Val last spring about getting involved with these community of practices, one of her first responses was, well, I'm more of an in-person person, and it's interactive, and I like to engage with the people. So she really had to be a little creative and innovative to make this work over half the country and through a computer. So thank you so much for interacting with us and finding some ways to be effective in your communication. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jess for final comments.
Thank you, Val, and thank you, David. I just want to draw everybody's attention to the survey questions. We'd love to see your responses and ask you to please give them, especially as it relates to the third survey question this time around. We're asking for you to please share with us any topics or individuals that you would like to hear from. If we continue the community of practice in 2015, we're open to any of those ideas, so please share them. I will leave the platform up for a couple minutes, actually for about 10 minutes, to make sure folks are able to give their feedback. Again, we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you all joining us today and over the last 8 months. It was really good to have you, and we'll be in touch. Thanks so much, and everybody have a good day.
Thanks, everybody. I really enjoyed it. Have a great day.
Thank you, Val. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.